Welcome to Solved, the political discussion show for people with attention spans and those looking to develop one. My name is Jay, and our other resident solvers are Amanda, Deon, and Erin, who will offer a greeting now.
Hey there.
Hello.
How's it going?
Collectively, we produce the venerable, indispensable, not to mention award-winning podcast, Best of the Left, where humans, that's us, curate progressive media on a chosen topic, creating episodes that are greater than the sum of their parts. On this show, we use those same curation skills to pull together stories and ideas that help us solve some of society's biggest problems, because if we don't tell you how to think, someone dumber on the internet will. Today, we're looking at how they're robbing you blind. They're robbing you fucking blind, and you're thanking them for the opportunity. And they're not just going to destroy you in the process. They're going to take us all down and destroy the world while they're at it. Buy now, pay later. You know what that is? That's credit. Like credit cards or literally any other kind of loan that has ever existed. But somehow people think that it's basically the same as using a debit card, which is ridiculous. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. So we're going to get to that. But first, you may recall that we ran through a series of headlines from the Babylon Bee, like anthropologists attempting to decipher a mysterious alien culture last week. Some of them were interesting and surprising that they were coming from a conservative perspective, at least we thought. There was this one, Republican Party searching insane asylums for next popular female politician. And we really struggled at that one. We were like, well, hold on a second. They are conservatives, but they know that Marjorie Taylor Greene maybe needs mental health help or something. So like we were confused about that. And so apologies to anyone who was like yelling at us through their devices for not seeing what was so clear. I have an update. I figured out what the misogyny angle is in that one that we were missing before. In this one, the misogyny isn't about who's being referred to, but about who's not. The reality is that male Republicans say things that are just as outlandish as female Republicans, but the media in general, and even right-wing sites like the Babylon Bee, react a lot more to women sounding crazy and more easily put them in that category, whereas men saying crazy things are given more of a pass. So that's the misogyny that's being reflected here. We regret the error.
Yeah, actually, I realized I had missed that in the article they specifically point to the comparison, like saying instead of finding really intelligent women who behave themselves in public, I guess, they've gone to the mental institution to find these other women. And that actually gave me a little more insight. That stopped them from full on saying that women shouldn't be in politics. It's just that we can't find any of the ones that we want. I think they were trying to buffer themselves against accusations of sexism, which is crazy because the whole thing is sexist and misogynist. But
And you said around that, the one about Pam Bondi not honoring Charlie Kirk's legacy by ending free speech, as if Pam Bondi is the one and only Republican who's doing exactly that. And that I've noticed that multiple times, like with the Epstein files, like all kinds of stuff. If you look at the right wing reaction to it, it's all focused on Pam Bondi as if it's not a giant, I don't know, conspiracy, I guess is probably the right word, but they're all involved in it. And Pam Bondi seems to get the brunt of it. And it's just because she's she.
Yeah, as long as we're talking about satire, this is coming to mind. There's an Onion article that's that you're reminding me of, Deon. Former Japanese internment camp used as immigration detention center. Excuse me, this is in the Onion, but that is real. That is not a satirical headline. This is where they have the like man on the street reactions. So the real news is that a former Japanese internment camp is being used as an immigrant detention center. And Deon, what you just reminded me of was, are they really targeting Bondi because she's a woman? No way to know. But one person's response to the internment camp is a few more coincidences like this, and I might start to worry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But is this unusual? Because, I mean, Kellyanne Conway was full of the jokes first term. I remember specifically a Saturday Night Live episode where they had her being it, and she was just like coming
Mhm.
up from the sewer. She was a scapegoat for how many things? Like, we can laugh
Mhm.
at her, so we don't actually have to be concerned about what that administration is doing.
Yeah.
So, not new.
I mean, you still got to poke fun at the person of the regime. I feel like it's all fair game, but yes, the amount of attention, I agree, was heavily on her.
Caroline Levitt, the
Mhm.
amount of attacks on her appearance, even, this supposedly left, there's so many that are focused on her appearance when
Remember
everything she
Sarah
says is
Huckabee?
horrific. Yeah. Like, focus on what she's saying. It's horrific. There's plenty
Mhm.
to attack there.
Right.
I have one more update for you. Just a reminder, we went through a couple of other headlines from the Babylon Bee last week that were very clearly misogynistic, or racist, and there was no discussion needed. There was Uber to begin offering riders choice of woman driver or good driver, not complicated. And then piggybacking on that, they put out another one, same formula. Uber to begin offering not an Asian option because being racist and telling very tired and old jokes is all the rage over the Babylon Bee. Well, either great minds think alike or the Onion has been watching their competition, because just after we last recorded, I found this headline from the Onion. New Uber feature allows women to request non-threatening eunuch driver.
Which is more on target, because that is a real problem.
The Uber assault problem,
Yeah.
I've seen like one article about it. That's a much
Mhm.
bigger story than is being portrayed. It's terrifying.
Absolutely.
What? It's almost like we need public transportation, and all of this
Mm.
could be solved.
Well, no,
Yeah.
you can't take the trains anymore, Erin, because you might get murdered. That's the new argument against public transportation.
I want to add this too. The headline does most of the work for this article, but they do take it one level deeper in a like subtle, interesting way. So wait for it. Quote, many of our eunuchs underwent their gelding operations in childhood, so they've never even experienced a powerful surge of testosterone and can entertain passengers with beautiful, high-pitched castrato arias. We're excited to see that drivers who aren't already eunuchs are opting to castrate themselves to get more rides.
God.
Whew. It's like,
Oh boy.
if that is not the gig economy in a nutshell. So violence against women and male desperation, that is a perfect tease for our members only segment today. Because during the regular show, we're going to be focusing a lot on how women are the ones being at least financially targeted to, basically like create personalities based on debt-fueled purchases. So we thought it was only fair to also address how men are targeted and manipulated to reproduce the anger and violence that also goes to serve the wealthy and the elite. So sign up and stay tuned for that. Exciting stuff coming. All right, on to our major topic. They're robbing you fucking blind, particularly the already financially vulnerable, and even Fox Business, along with the New York Times, has taken notice. Fox Business wrote this article that I think, did we say it was going a little viral?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Buy now, pay later usage for groceries nearly doubles as consumers struggle with food costs. And I mean, they say lots of things in a Fox Business type of way. They just point out that data from an April Lending Trees report shows that 25% of such users have used the service to buy groceries, up from 14% a year ago. And look, my takeaway initially, I think, is the same as everyone else's. They were like, oh my God, that means people are financially stressed, because if they're using buy now, pay later for their groceries, they must be in a bad situation. Journalists for the Times went and interviewed people, and that is definitely the case for some. But I'm just now in the moment realizing that the doubling from 14 to 25, or nearly doubling, that's also cultural, Because what we were going to get to in the conversation today is that it has become so culturally normalized to use buy now, pay later for literally everything that people not in financial stress are going to be like, yeah, I'll buy now, pay later my groceries. Why wouldn't I? I do it for literally everything. So it might be more complicated than just people are really, really stretched. And it could be that some are really stretched and some are like, I'm down with buy now, pay later for everything because it's great. Because the people who use it tends to think that.
And the amount of money that buy now, pay later companies have invested over the last year has probably helped increase their numbers. And so there are a few reasons to point to for why this could have gone up so much. Things are more expensive, though. People are strapped. Like, that is a reality.
Yeah, so the Times mentions that food prices are 28% higher than they were in 2020, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And lower income households spent roughly a third of their after-tax income on food in 2023 compared to 13.5% for middle income households, according to the Department of Agriculture. So like, it's not that people aren't strapped. I don't want to mislead as though that is not also part of it. It definitely is. And Fox Business, like we like to note that the difference between Fox News and Fox Business is that Fox Business doesn't tend to lie to their audiences because they're dealing with money and they really don't want to anger people who care about money. And so it says between 2020 and 2021, the uptick in food costs was in large part driven by COVID-19 related supply chain disruptions and shifting preferences, according to the Agriculture Department. Again, this is Fox Business just saying things that are true. In 2022, food prices increased at the fastest pace since 1979, largely due to outbreaks of the highly pathogenic avian influenza, as well as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which exacerbated other economy-wide inflationary pressures, such as high energy costs, the USDA reported. So again, just like Biden wasn't mentioned there, just pointing out everyone's anger about inflation. There were actual reasons for it. We know what they are. And it wasn't because Biden was a dickhead or something, or his infrastructure plan. That was not it.
Right. I also like the advice at the end of the article. You know, they have to kind of give people a plan. So they interview some advisor, and this person named Schultz said that consumers should start factoring in higher costs when going through their budget. It may require some sacrifice, but better to prepare for the worst and be pleasantly surprised than to hope for the best and end up having to scramble later on, which is quite a rosy finish for that article, which I believe did mention tariffs at some point. I don't have the quote in front of me right now.
Yeah, they mentioned tariffs as not a concrete reason, but people fear the tariffs will make prices even higher than they already are.
Yeah. But what if you're pleasantly surprised and everything just gets cheaper all of a sudden? Like, what if that happens? That'd be nice, huh?
You never know.
Nice little positive spin.
That is super rosy because we just have never seen evidence that prices are going to go down after inflation. Prices generally stay where they're at, and we're going to continue to have to factor that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, by the way, I just checked that 2 to 3 months ago, Trump and RFK Jr. canceled the bird flu vaccine. And then like just a couple of days ago, yet another case of bird flu was found in Nebraska this time. And so our policy on bird flu is like hope that it doesn't get worse. And we'll just
hope for the best.
See how that goes. Hope for the best. Yeah.
Don't plan for the worst in that case. Just hope for the best.
The New York Times does go into a little bit more detail about what Biden tried to do. It says, last year under the Biden administration, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau worried that pay later customers would be especially vulnerable if the economy worsened and issued an interpretive rule to regulate the companies the same way it does the credit card industry, which makes sense because they're fucking identical. I'm going to make that point over and over again because people have been tricked into thinking they're not exactly the fucking same, but they are. And this spring, The agency, continuing the Times, this spring, the agency, which the Trump administration has tried to dismantle, said it would not, quote, prioritize enforcement actions on pay later loans. So we're not prioritizing vaccines or consumer protection. Just to note that.
I love that the Biden administration was like, just in case things get worse, we should make sure that these people aren't negatively affected and maybe add some regulation. Again, planning for the worst, which is usually a good move, not just hoping for the best.
All right, so just to get into a little bit of the substance of these buy now, pay later systems and loans and costs, I just want to point out, like, here's why merchants are using these systems. It says, quote, stores and service providers also seem eager to offer the payment option, even though it's fairly costly for merchants to do so. The fees that the pay later companies charge are often more than double the swipe fees merchants pay to process transactions with credit card networks and banks. But it may be worth it because customers are more likely to make a purchase and buy more items when the loans are available, end quote. So it costs businesses more to offer this payment option, and their expectation is that they will come out ahead anyway in the long run. This can only happen one of two ways. Number one, they could raise prices to cover all the fees. The New York Times doesn't mention that, but like obviously any business is going to calculate all of their expenses, and then they're going to calculate the prices of their merchandise based on kind of the market and what they can get away with, and try to price it as high as they can to cover all their expenses. What the Times points out is they think that people will consume more. So even if they don't raise prices, the idea is that people will consume more because they can do the buy now, pay later, which I really just have to stress is exactly the fucking same as using a credit card. So we already had credit cards. They already existed. You could already buy now and pay later on a credit card, but people are doing it with this new system because they've been tricked into thinking that it's different. And companies could have been like comfortably profitable before without encouraging people to overconsume even more than what we already are. And now they are even more part of the conspiracy to push people to overconsume because they have just opted in to paying an even higher fee for what is effectively a credit card service. And so they're going to try to make that up by figuring out how to trick people into buying more shit.
This all feels like, I mean, we talk about it all the time on the show, but like, this is just a capitalism problem in general. We are at, especially in America, there is enough for everyone here to have everything they need 10, 20, 30 times over. So we have to keep manufacturing these new ways for us to buy new shit that we don't need. It's like the new iPhone that just released that is simultaneously thinner than the last iPhone, but also thicker because of the way that the camera is set up, being sold as something that you have to have. Well, it's also super expensive. If you want the status symbol, how are you going to pay for it? Well, just pay for it with Klarna or any of the other Afterpay systems because you have to have it, but you don't. The phone that you had before works perfectly well. None of this stuff is addressing that. There are needs that everyone has, and the fact that people are buying groceries with this, it went viral for a reason. That is a horrific trend, because if you are putting your needs on layaway, that means the rest of your life is you're struggling. But part of that is also because they want you to put the needs on layaway because they need you to continue to buy the things that we don't need. And that's a failure of this system just in general, is there are too many things. This consumption is out of control. We have to figure out a way to limit consumption as a society, not in the way that only the poor don't get the good, nice, fun things because that'll be the solution probably going forward, is that the rich getting to spend and the poor don't get to spend anymore, and they only put the necessities of life on layaway, because that's, it's a credit card plus layaway, but worse. So there has to be some sort of reckoning with the fact that everything keeps going up, people's wages stay stagnant, and there is no way to continue this line go up trend without extending credit to people who wouldn't get credit otherwise.
This is also like an intersectionality thing of like dopamine also, because let's not act like shopping is just about the stuff. It also has to do with the
Mhm.
feelings and the hormones that
Yeah.
get released, and they've gamified it. I mean, we were talking offline
Mhm.
about now when I go to certain sites, like that is automatically the payment option that they put. And then they break it down for you. So you can see like you could pay $250 or you could do 4 payments that are lower and,
Yep.
spread it out. Is that necessary? I mean, for the grocery thing, that speaks on a different level. But as far as things that we want in life, like the iPhone that Deon referenced, no, but it seems way more achievable when you have it broken down. The dopamine's gone, though, by the time you pay that last payment, for sure. There might even be some
Yeah.
shopper's
Oh,
remorse that's kicked in.
Right
I think
then,
it kicks
yeah.
in immediately. I think the shopper's remorse usually kicks in before it arrives at your house. Honestly.
I mean, there was another stat in one of these articles, I can't remember which one, that said more than 50% of people regret their Black Friday purchases. And I thought that was higher than I even thought, because usually you're quote unquote getting a deal and that should feel good for a long time. But people buy things they don't actually want or actually can't afford or think are big ticket items that they think they want. And then they realize, oh, never mind, right? But the point I wanted to make real quick is I think it's important just to say that this is not what layaway was, that there's really no comparison here because you get the thing up front. And with layaway, you would pay up until you paid the whole price and then you would receive the item. So that dopamine hit doesn't come until later, which could also, by the time you make all those payments, maybe you think like, maybe I didn't really need it or maybe I didn't really want it. I mean, I used to use layaway when I was like a teenager, shop at Marshall's or something. I'd put stuff on layaway and then like realized pretty quickly like, oh, I can't afford that or I don't need that or whatever. And the time is what allows you to make those decisions. With this, you get what you want right away. Then you're just left with the after effects of the bad feelings afterwards. So I think the only way to make yourself feel better is to continue playing the game, right? Keep going because the part that feels good is when you get something. So that's just one more incentive to push you along.
Yeah, lots of these articles and like online discussion about buy now pay later is it's like a new version of layaway, but you get the thing first instead of at the end. I was like, right, but that's like the reason why it's not at all the same and completely different and actually literally fucking identical to credit cards. That's what credit cards are. You don't have to pay right away, but you still get the thing. And then later you pay. Like they reinvented the thing that, so we're going to get deep into all of this. Erin, thank you for bringing up emotions so early because there are so many feelings that people are having about their shopping, and the people who are robbing you fucking blind know it. And they have research and scientists and billions of dollars of supercomputers to figure out how to manipulate your feelings to get you to buy their shit that you don't need. And Erin, you were talking about at the moment of payment, the way they tell you how it could be spread out in multiple payments, that's called cart conversion. And I'm not a emotional shopper. I don't go shopping to feel good. My life doesn't work that way, but I know a little bit about it. And I have heard, and I kind of get this, people will go shopping online, put some things in their cart. It feels kind of good. It's like a little fantasy of what they're going to buy. And then they get to the end and they're like, yeah, I'm not really going to buy it. It's just, it was nice to pretend that I was going to. It's like an activity. It's like a little feel good activity. And then you don't feel bad about actually spending the money. It's fine. Like, whatever. People do that. That is what merchants want to stop. They don't want you to have the fun without spending the money. And so they're using the buy now, pay later to trick you into tipping over into that next phase. Like, you know what? I will go ahead and buy this stuff I don't need. You might have talked yourself out of it without that right there, but with it sitting there in your face saying that you could pay a smaller amount up front, that tips people over into buying things that they would not have bought otherwise. And if you think that you're the one gaming the system because, look at me, I get the stuff, but I don't have to pay right away, you're not the one outsmarting them. You are never, ever going to be the one outsmarting the industry whose whole existence is premised on outsmarting people like you.
So this is going to sound unrelated at first, but I promise you it is related. I don't know why, watching the interview Ezra Klein recently did with Ben Shapiro. I know. But it was interesting in the sense that it exposed the core issue that has always been there between the right and the left, which is a personal responsibility versus systemic forces dynamic, right? And of course, I think it's messier than that. And I think people on the right and left see that it's messier than that, but it's still at the root. That is actually what always comes up. And so whether you're talking about buy now, pay later companies or shopping in general, you can see the different arguments like through that personal versus systemic lens. So many on the right who believe in this like hardcore personal responsibility ideology, they would say, get your finances in order. Like, it's on you that you decided to use this system, this program, this afterpay thing, and then don't buy what you can't afford. Pretty simple, right? Only an idiot would buy what they can't afford, like as though they've never done that in their lives. And that all sounds well and good. And people on the left like believe that too, in the sense that, yeah, you shouldn't make irresponsible financial decisions. But the systemic forces are huge. And that's what the left does understand, that giant, as Jay was saying, manipulative, bankrolled forces that are using literal psychology to make you do things and make you do irrational things. Like things that if you weren't manipulated by all the messaging, you might not do. Of course, like continuing to make the case for them that not only is it good, but it's okay culturally, that you shouldn't have any shame around it, that everyone should do this. This is like trying to change the culture. And that's why the left focuses so much on systemic forces, because we can see that they are powerful enough to change people's behavior. And they've invested millions in the art of this. And it's been going on for decades. So to sit here and to pretend that just because you can't see through it all and you personally are maybe not affected somehow, is to imagine that everyone is like you and in the same financial position as you. And the internet and social media makes it easier than ever for companies to manipulate people. And they use people and influencers, which we probably will get to make this absolutely irresistible, not just something you can do, but something you want and crave to do. So instead of imagining that people should just be super responsible, how about we address those who are trying to irresponsibly extract from people? That doesn't mean you can't also talk about financial education or financial responsibility, but why must we ignore completely the huge, well-funded fucking monster in the room in the name of capitalism? Why do we have to ignore that? That is so dumb. And true capitalism is supposed to be about giving people choices, not about assaulting them with manipulative marketing that is wildly effective because it's based on our understanding of human psychology. So, of course, if they get swindled, if the people who are espousing personal responsibility get swindled or convinced of something, which they are now and then, it's never their fault. That's an outside force. But if someone else who they see as other or not like them gets manipulated, then they should have seen it coming and been smarter. And through that lens, it just all makes sense to me why they desperately want everyone to be the same. Because they think if everyone's like me, none of this would happen. no one would fall for it. That's not how human psychology works. That's not how any of this works. And to be forced to ignore the forces that are assaulting us is stupid.
With that in mind and everything Amanda said, I think it's interesting that we also have simultaneous to this new rise in inverse layaway or whatever you want to call it, there's also an enormous rise in online gambling. And the cultural norms around overconsumption, buying things that you can't afford, are starting to erode at the same time that the cultural norms around gambling are starting to erode and go down. There was a time where if you wanted to gamble on a sporting event, you had to go to specific physical locations to do it, or you had to do it outside the law with someone in your town that was doing something outside the law. Now it's available everywhere, and this industry is exploding. It is I don't know how many billions of dollars the gambling industry is now, but it's taken off, and it's the same. It's of the piece of this overconsumption. It's the other end of it. Now you're chasing the means to spend all this money because you're gonna gamble the money to get more money, and the amount of money that is spent to normalize, to entice. The football season has just started, so I've watched a few games, and I don't know how much longer my love of sports will outpace my hatred of commercials and commercialism, because it is nonstop, wall to wall, your favorite celebrity telling you how fun and easy and how free this money is that they're giving you to come play a little bit, and then you'll win a bunch and you'll be like me, your rich, famous celebrity parasocial friendship. That's what they're selling. It's not that much different than the buy now, pay later companies, except for it's actually making money. Like, they're making a ton of money. The buy now, pay later companies still haven't figured out exactly how to make money on this. They will. They're going to. But the social norms behind it, that's the part that Amanda said that really made this click, because it wasn't normal for everyone to gamble. I have so many people in my life that never gambled before that gamble pretty regularly now. And we had the rules and regulations around it because gambling's really old. We know what it does to societies.
It's addicting.
It's never good. It's an addiction. And I don't think we talk about this overconsumption as an addiction as much as we should either, because I think it is. Because that instant regret, the buyer's remorse that Jay brought up, it's part of that addiction cycle. You get your little hit of dopamine, then you instantly regret it because, man, I shouldn't have done that. Gambling, same thing, just any addiction in general. We are a society that is selling addiction and satisfying your individual urges over anything that's good for you. And this is just another part of that. And at some point, it can't just be personal responsibility. And I think we passed that a long time ago. But the idea that it's even personal responsibility is silly, because there are billions of dollars being spent to make you do something, whether you want to, whether you are directly focused. It's just in the atmosphere now. I saw a small child at a gas station with his dad, talking to his dad about how they should just buy one of these scratchers tickets because they're going to win $5,000. The scratchers tickets are right there in front of you at the gas station checkout. They're right there, and they're bright and they're shiny and they're colorful and they're directed at that small child. Yeah, well, $1, you can win tens of thousands of dollars. Why wouldn't you spend $1?
Which brings us to this Fast Company article, Inside the Manipulative Conspiracy of Consumption. And this is an interview with the director of the new Netflix film Buy Now. So the article says, quote, The internet is littered with blogs and opinion articles claiming consumers are to be blamed, that our need to shop is ruining our planet. But Flora Baganel, the producer of a new Netflix documentary called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, sees an injustice in that framing. Why should everyday people feel guilty, the film asks, when manufacturers and retail companies are doing everything within their power to drive up the pace of consumption? These corporations have designed products to break down quickly, promised that recycling would keep the planet clean, and precision engineered their advertisements and marketplaces to make the shopping impulse all but irresistible, all while passing the environmental toll onto the public. End quote. And so Amanda and I kind of incidentally watched the South Park episode, but it was like one of those supersized episodes that they do every once in a while about obesity recently. And the parallels became so clear in that. And for clarification on South Park, like I grew up with South Park. It's been on for 30 years and it sort of hit me in my, mid childhood at just the right spot. And we have mixed feelings. Like sometimes they're right, sometimes they're dickheads, but what they always were was like kind of libertarian, which actually makes perfect sense. What I've always said about libertarians is that they are exactly right about half the time and completely off their rockers the other half. And what has been interesting about South Park in recent years is that it seems like they grew up, which is what I always feel like libertarians need to do. And the South Park creators, they kind of are who they were, but they have had adulthood take its toll. And now they realize things like, I guess climate change really does exist. And, oh, and it turns out there are systemic forces in the world. So, they've made billions of dollars by calling Cartman fat for 30 years. And they finally made an episode about obesity, including, the craze over Ozempic and all the other drugs. And the whole premise of the show is that the mascots of junk food companies are in a literal cartel figuring out how to attack the makers of the drugs that are making it so that people don't crave their shitty food. And that dynamic personified is exactly what is actually happening. Corporations who want you to buy shit you don't need or eat crap you don't actually want, is not good for your body, are always actively trying to figure out how to trick people into buying their stuff. And so whether it's South Park talking about obesity or this documentary talking about the conspiracy of overconsumption, like it is an absolute conspiracy. They are coming after you with everything they have. And if you think that it's a matter of personal responsibility and willpower, then like, what are you even do? Like, you don't have enough brain power of your own to be part of this conversation. That's an absurd perspective to have at this point when we have all the information we have about how corporations work. No one's in the dark anymore. You can't be tricked into thinking, oh, it's just personal responsibility and I'm a loser for overspending or overconsuming or overeating. It's way too much of a mixed bag and way more complicated than that for that to be the conversation we're still having.
I like the parallels that we have here because we'll say these three things may seem unrelated. Buy now, pay later, Ozempic usage / diet culture, and gambling. And yet I think they all have similarities in the feedback loop that happens. Because like the thing about Ozempic is it works as long as you take it. So you end up committing on the episode they said $1,500 a month, which I heard is actually accurate.
Yeah.
You might get it a little bit cheaper if you go to one of the other drugs, but it works. And you're committing to do that for the rest of your life or for as long as you can or as long as you care about your weight. The same as the buy now, pay later, where it's like for a while, you probably do feel like you can make those payments and you can actually afford that. But then you're going to get to a place where you have so many payments going out that now you need to do that, which could be, where I mean, I do think, again, that grocery necessity, like, that is a whole other layer to it. But
Yeah.
you might get to the point where you're so spread thin that you end up using it for groceries, even though that's not how it started. And then the same with gambling. Like, you might win one, or you might continue to lose and realize that you have to pay back money you've borrowed or you're in the hole. So you continue to gamble thinking, well, if I just hit it big, I can get myself out of this. Like, it is just a feedback loop that entraps you.
Yeah. Perfect summation of all of that. Yeah.
So I had thoughts about the relationship that progressives have with business in general. Like we're pretty down on it. We're pretty, like business, not so good. But to clarify, it's not actually the business part that progressives have a problem with. It's what's called uncaptured externalities, which is a fancy way of saying the things that should cost money to a business that they don't have to spend money on, which allows them to become more profitable than they really should be able to. So, super classic example, air and water pollution. If a company creates pollution that goes into the air or into the water and they don't have to pay for that, then that's a cost that they're saving that's being spread to everyone else. Whoever's downstream of that water is going to pay for that cost. That could end up as like a cancer cluster of people affected by the pollution. Those people and their health insurance companies are going to pay the cost of that corporation polluting, right? So that's a classic example. But progressives would argue there are other externalities like underpaid workers create social stress. So if a corporation is profiting and part of their profits come from not paying people enough, those people's, the stress in their lives, the financial stress, which maybe turns into buy now, pay later loans, that turns into financing that makes things cost more. All of those things are externalities to the company that employs those workers and underpays them. Another one is just-in-time scheduling. This is relatively new as computer programs have become powerful enough to schedule shift workers with algorithmic precision, which is great for the corporations, super shitty for the people who are working those shift jobs because humans have like logistics in their lives that they have to figure out.
They have lives.
And so, yeah, the corporation doesn't have a life. The corporation has an algorithm and no time to kill, no need to rest. The people who are doing those jobs, if they are imposed upon with just-in-time scheduling, that makes it harder for them to live their life and schedule their life and schedule childcare. And that can incur all kinds of stresses or extra expenses or whatever. But that is an externality to the company employing that person. And to that list, I will add overconsumption, waste, and the pollution of shit people buy that they don't need, that they end up throwing away eventually. All of those are externalities to the corporations making the stuff, marketing the stuff, convincing you to buy the stuff. All of it is profit for them that should actually be an expense for them. They should have to pay for these uncaptured externalities, meaning they shouldn't be allowed to pollute air or water. They shouldn't be allowed to underpay workers. They shouldn't be allowed to schedule just in time in ways that impact people's lives and abilities to organize their life around work. And the drive to overconsume, as we've been saying, the billions of dollars that goes into the research to figure out how to trick people into overconsuming is an externality they never have to worry about. It's their job to produce it, sell it to you, and then all of the costs related to whatever it is you bought is either yours or you'll throw it away for free and then it's everyone's. The cost goes to everyone, not the companies actually creating the shit. And so that is what this documentary that we're talking about a little bit is getting at, is that basically wasteful overconsumption needs to become not a profitable externality for corporations to be able to ignore. So this article says, quote, without explicitly using the term buy now makes the case for an alternative paradigm called the polluter pays principle, which holds that companies, not the public, should be held financially responsible for dealing with the waste they generate. In wonkier terms, the idea manifests as extended producer responsibility, or EPR, policies that typically require large companies to pay into a central fund for waste management and prevention. End quote. So it explains like there's no literal conspiracy here. Obviously, it's not actually all the mascots of all the junk food companies and cereal companies getting together in a boardroom to form a conspiracy to get people to buy more. It is just the drive for profit that is the conspiracy. And regulation is the only thing that can rein in that drive. It is completely irrational to think that corporations could make changes, not just would make changes, but they could make changes to rein in consumption on their own. They can't do it. They are part of a system that is a one direction ratchet. They are only allowed to make the line go up. And if they don't, the people in charge will be taken out and someone else will be put in who will make the line go up at whatever cost.
This right here is the left-right divide in a nutshell, and why it's so scary that one side is having more influence on everything. Because the right wing believes that these are all just natural forces and there's nothing that can be done about it. The government is bad, the government interferes, and we should just let these companies do whatever they want. And like Jay just said, it's a one-way ratchet. They will continue to ratchet up to the point where it's out of control. We believe that there should be regulations, that the government should be used to put these rules on these companies to make things better for people in society and pull it back and make it more fair, and just as a byproduct, make things better for everyone. When we have these systems that are completely going this other direction, it is inevitable that you can either do what we're doing right now and try to come up with solutions, try to figure out ways that we can make things better, or go the full nihilistic, fuck it, nothing matters route and start doing things that are bad for everyone, bad for yourself, because you don't believe anything can get better. And I got to be honest, I understand where that's coming from. I understand that feeling because it does seem big. It does seem out of control. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that we have put regulations on these companies in the past, that things have been done in the past to make things better. It is possible, but it's easy to believe it's not possible anymore. And we are creating a system in which it will be even easier for more people to not see a way out. So we have to do this to make things better for people. We have to make society work for human beings. Otherwise, we're going to lose control and have a bunch of people who don't believe this society can be good for anyone ever again. And that's not good for all of us.
And Europe is, maybe they're not doing everything that needs to be done, but they have put regulations on companies and it's better. We have examples to look to. It's not even like we have to make it up ourselves and guess what the results might be, right? The other thing I was thinking about is how much millennials in particular got blamed for destroying the economy when we were in our 20s.
Avocado toast.
Avocado toast, but also that, they're not buying enough. Oh, look at them spending all their money on avocado toast. That was a whole thing. But then also, they're killing this industry. They're killing this industry. They're killing this industry. And good God, it's a joke now, like how often it happened. And I realized that the younger generation, Gen Z, has actually been much more, in terms of the things they talk about anyway, environmentally conscious and like wanting clothing brands to do better and not be such burdens on the environment, and trying to buy ethically and responsibly where they can, or going to a thrift shop and thrifting. And thrifting has become a whole trend. And that was a positive direction. And I feel like some of this Afterpay stuff is just a like, oh shit, we're going to lose those young, stupid buyers. And I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm saying the companies think you're stupid. And so we have to assault them with manipulation and use TikTok influencers to make them think, no, 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 don't bother with a thrift store every now and then. We are creating a culture for Gen Z where buying a lot, way more than you ever need, is cool and okay because they realize they've lost them. That's kind of where and that's speculation. I don't have like data to back that up exactly, but it does seem like they could have lost that generation and blamed them for the end of, I don't know, shopping in general, capitalism in general. Like, I don't know what they blame them for at this point, but that's the kind of motivation. Like I think people think, oh, it's just to make more money. And yes, it is line go up, but it's also we have to change culture in order to make line go up. And that is a huge effort. And that's not just one company. That's collectively businesses saying, like, we have to shift gears, find a different way to reach and manipulate these younger shoppers so that we can make sure they don't suddenly have the realization that maybe they don't need everything they see on the internet. And, they need to change everything because we've been moving in the right direction culturally about this stuff. People are talking about overconsumption more than ever. They're talking about brands' impact on the environment, especially in the fashion industry. So they have to change it. They have to totally force us to change course or else, right? That's the scary boogeyman, is what happens if people don't buy as much shit as possible.
So I like what you said, and I feel like I have to put my comment, a disclaimer in front of it. I do support small businesses. But I'll say one of the things that I think is going around a lot is, all of these corporations are trash. Shop small businesses. I can agree with that because at some level, you're never going to avoid spending your money. You're going to have to consume on some level. But a lot of small businesses are using huge factories in China. Multiple small businesses are like selling the same products that other small businesses are also selling. And it is not conquering that consumption problem, that overconsumption problem. So I do think that we still have the mindset that if we just spend our money more responsibly, we'll be able to like avoid all the repercussions. And that's not necessarily reality. Again, when it comes to groceries and things like that, going more community based, absolutely agree. But I do think that we have to caution around, oh, well, if you just spend your money with the right people, you still very much have to be aware of the environmental impact and how those products get made and where they get made.
But it shouldn't be on us to have to be these like hyper conscious consumers, right? But that is the world we live in, so that's what we have to be, and that takes a lot of brain power and effort. And a lot of people are going to say, I don't have time for that, or I don't want to have time for that, and so the manipulation continues.
Well, and I think that's my point about small businesses. Like, you shop a small business, you're still shopping. You're still, playing into the consumption. So, like, we as individuals are not going to solve this by just making those choices.
Right.
Yeah. And the element of these buy now, pay later systems that encourage people to spend more money than they would have otherwise are merchant agnostic. You can use those systems whether you're on Amazon or you're at the farmer's market. If they accept card payments, you can set up a buy now, pay later system on your phone or something and pay that way. So using these systems that see, I say allow, but like, it's just fucking credit cards. We already have those. So these are subprime loans versions of credit cards. Credit cards require a credit check, and so you might get a relatively low limit if your credit is not good. Like if you're young and you really shouldn't have too much credit. This is just subprime lending, which is the same as credit cards, but riskier. So these systems existing and giving credit to basically anyone makes it so that where you're shopping doesn't impact how you pay. If you fall down the rabbit hole of thinking that buy now, pay later is great and morally equivalent to using debit cards, then it's a totally different calculation. I mean, right now, we're going to start talking even more about emotion. I brought it up earlier. Like, so much of this is emotional, completely irrational, bypassing logic almost entirely. And to be clear, not everyone is being targeted equally, which brings us to this Atlantic article, The Rise of Cute Debt. And it says,
Ugh.
on the subway a few weeks back, I noticed an ad for a buy now, pay later service from Cash App. It read, "Little payments are so much cuter." This ad wasn't made for men, I thought.
Yep.
And yeah, no shit. And it goes on to point out that clothing accounts for more than half of the service's gross merchandise value. And obviously, women are the bulk of those customers. And like, just be clear, it's not like the companies are just like showing up and be like, hey, we'll give you a loan if you want. And if you don't, cool. They're taking active steps. It says, quote, Klarna, for example, paired up with Paris Hilton to create the House of Y2K, an interactive pop-up devoted to millennial nostalgia, selling a limited edition Paris Hilton and Klarna velour tracksuit. Klarna also partnered with the fast fashion brand Shein on pop-up stores. I don't know if I could have fit more buzzwords about how to get people to buy shit in that was one sentence. It looks like a paragraph, but it was one sentence. We've got celebrity influencer, we've got pop-up, we've got millennial nostalgia, we've got limited edition.
Mm-hmm.
And Shane in one sentence. They know the hot buttons. They know what tricks people into buying shit. It's more complicated than the average person happens to know off the top of their heads, but it's not that complicated for them to figure out and then understand how to reproduce. If you know what the buttons are, you just install them and push them.
So there was a line in this article that said, social media leads us to believe that every purchase we make now is sort of a micro expression of identity. And that really hit me because I grew up as social media was becoming a thing and evolving in my late teens and 20s. Clothes suddenly became more than just having some nice things to wear out. There was this like pretty dramatic shift because it was about having new things constantly because everyone took an insane amount of photos every weekend when you went out and then put them in albums on Facebook. And so if you were in the same outfit, like shirt, dress, etc., multiple weekends in a month, then those photos were put online, you started to look like that was the only thing you owned, like you had a uniform. And we would all make jokes about this. This was like a very, like, not something someone was thinking about to themselves personally. Like, we would all joke about this fairly often. And so, like, that would be embarrassing if you were in too many pictures consecutively in the same clothes. And so that was definitely when I started buying more clothes. And that was when I started getting credit cards from stores that I shouldn't have been doing that, but I did. It was a big problem, and I definitely was not alone. Like, all of my friends did that, and Facebook launched the ability to post pictures towards the end of my college years, and then like the culture of posting pictures just ramped up from there. I think it's actually died down a little bit now, but in the beginning it was like albums of 100 photos from your weekend level of obsession, right? And everyone did it. So everyone you were out with that weekend all posted, pictures online. It was like very intense. And I'm sure many people listening will remember this. But by the end of my 20s, and it wasn't just the clothes, it was also all the weddings I was in and all of that crap, right? I was in some debt, and I just felt so much pressure to make sure I did all the things and had the clothes for all the things and bought all the dresses for all the wedding events and, like all the trips that were taken for wedding events and weekends out with friends and not looking like you had the same outfit. Like, I can't describe, like, I don't feel any of those things now. And I'm so grateful because now I'm 40 and I guess I don't care. But at the time, I remember the feeling, the pressure. We all felt that pressure. We all behaved this way because of social media, really. That's what kind of I think started to dawn on all of us. Like over time, we were like, "Ugh, this is just about how we are portrayed online and what that micro expression of identity is, right? It's what you look like, it's what you own, it's the clothes you wear." And, thankfully I had a good paying job. And so I didn't collapse into ruin and figured my shit out and shifted. But now I'm not nearly as much online as I used to be, but I think about people now and how much pressure is on people who are not just showing up in photos every now and then, but literally filming themselves and posting it on a regular basis. Like whether you're an influencer or not, that's like a kind of common thing now. And I can only imagine the kind of pressure that exists. And not just that, but then having the trendy thing that has gone viral that you were told you have to buy. And if you don't have it, then you haven't met some sort of level of status, whether it's earrings or a certain shirt or, a certain fucking water bottle, which we've done a whole show on before. That pressure is intense. So there are the major marketing forces in the world. And then there are the shifts in our society and how our society has moved so much online that has also added to this culture of new, more, 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 more. I mean, you guys did a whole show on, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism and, how people were doing hauls on social media, that was a trend, that people just bought a shit ton of stuff and, maybe returned some, maybe not, but that was like part of the trend. And that is driven by the internet. That's driven by social media and the peer pressure that exists on social media in terms of trending things. And like, we're just swimming in it, is my point. Like, it's just so hard to imagine extracting yourself. And so the only way you can fight back is some pretty aggressive measures, like saying, I'm not buying anything this month or for multiple months. And there are like no buy month trends that I've seen. But like that's what it's going to take. It's going to take another cultural viral movement to actually kick any of this down or change it.
Right. But that's not profitable. So it won't last
I
because
know.
these viral movements are bankrolled by corporations who want to sell shit. And this is all a bad idea and we should stop doing this and be happier for it doesn't profit anybody except each one of us individually. And so no one's going to fund that campaign. The next article we're coming to sort of piggybacks off your story because you came up in a time of social media where you put pressure on each other, but it took a little while for the idea of an influencer to come into existence on social media. And now the corporations can't just depend on people pressuring each other into buying shit. Why leave it to chance? Let's buy influencers to do that. And so another Atlantic article, buy now, pay later bubble is about to burst, says, quote, Klarna recently launched a creator platform to match merchants with influencers who have access to their target audiences.
That sentence makes me feel so gross.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Are you saying that like you haven't encountered this, Deon?
Like literally the use of the buzzwords is influencer, creator, the content, all that stuff makes me sick to my stomach. It really does. This corporate speak that we are all kind of internalizing and using ourselves just hides what's actually happening. It makes it all seem so anodyne, so just neutral. That's not what any of that is. Like, why is anyone an influencer? What are they trying to influence you to do? The term creator, I really want to think about that one for a while. Like, there was in our society one use of that word, pretty much. Creator was a god thing. This little individual, like now we got these little individual gods creating their own little universes, and we're all trying to be part of them now. There's something really disgusting about all of it. And for it all to be leveraged to get you to buy shit you don't need. I'm in the position now where I'm aging out of being the targeted audience. I'm several years older than you guys. I'm almost 50. I'm pretty close. Advertisers don't care about me anymore, which is an amazing benefit. It's very strange also because I now have more money than I've ever had, more buying power, but I'm also less likely to be targeted because I think they know these cultural forces that Amanda was talking about, like come 40, like, I don't care. I have bought the same pair of shoes 3 times in a row the last 3 years. They're comfortable,
Yep.
they look good, I like them. It's going to be the shoes I wear. I'm less likely to be influenced. I also know for a fact that I have so many shoes from the past that I still have because I was very influenced to buy all that stuff. And it was in a more, straightforward, hey, Michael Jordan's wearing these, you should wear these too.
Mm-hmm.
There is the social pressure of it too, but it wasn't constant from people I didn't know all the time that were also part of my life. This parasocial relationship that people have with social media has amplified all this to levels that I don't think it's discussed nearly enough. I know it is talked about. It's talked about in this article. But Jay sent around a TikTok of, I guess, an influencer talking about the lesbian experience, which is basically just an ad for Klarna because it did say it, but it didn't say it was an ad, right?
I'm so sorry. I got to interject because
Yeah.
I'm now the target audience for
Okay.
this. So,
You were the target
no,
audience
that's
for that
that.
video.
I don't know what word to use now that we've taken all the words. I'm going to say influencer because this is an actual ad. But
Yeah.
that's the whole bit. Like if you go to her page, there are other things and it's the lesbian hotel and it's a skit. When I came across that person, it was not an ad, but it was very similar video content.
Mhm.
This was just, oh, let me do the same bit, but add in sections so that it can be an ad.
This is how it's done. Like every, I know, creator, mini god that I follow has to use their like, somewhat very funny and original content they've created. And then I see it as like a poison pill that's hiding inside the content once you realize, oh, this is just an ad, right? But that's how they make their money. That's how this game works. And it's waiting for you out there. Now it's like, it really is unavoidable. You can't just wait and skip. It's like quite literally part of what you actually were following that person to enjoy. And so it's embedded in a way that you can't avoid it.
So, did anyone else scroll down to the comments of that TikTok of the comedian doing a skit, entertaining her audience, and shoehorning in a gross, weird ad for Klarna in the middle? But did anyone scroll down to see what people were saying about it?
I was so lost I had to get away immediately.
Oh, it triggered my gag reflex.
Okay.
I mean, when the ad came on, I was just like, why do people enjoy being manipulated like this? They think they're getting like a skit, but it's an ad, which is gross. And so I thought, like, I bet people are complaining in the comments. Nope. I don't know anything about this generation, obviously, because they fucking loved it. They commented specifically, that was a great ad. Not that was a great skit. Some people said that was, I love these are funny skits, like you make me laugh, etc. Other people specifically said, like, that was such a great ad. This thing you just did was an advertisement and I loved it.
That's the power that these people have, though. Because I mean, I think, some of this conversation has reminded me of 20, 30 years ago when we were just talking about the exposure to ads. But it is so much more complex and psychological now. I mean, it just continued to evolve. And that's what I think when I hear that. The people commenting are probably ones that follow, that actually do enjoy the skits. So then, of course, when the ad comes up, it's no problem because, like, it's the same thing. You just happen to mention the company.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
that's
it's an
gross.
acceptance that like
Yeah,
this is
it
how
is
they
an
make their
acceptance.
money, right? They're not going to judge them for
Well,
making their money as an influencer because they love them and think they're great. So
in this particular one, we're talking about the buy now, pay later, but the doing your bit, doing your skit, if you will, and then sliding in the advertising, that is so common now. I mean, it takes a minute to sometimes realize you're watching an ad.
And that's what they pay them for. They say, do this kind of video for me. I will pay you X amount of dollars, like that's how it works.
The other layer to it is we don't know how many of those commenters are real human beings. Because if it was an ad, then it could be funded by some bot accounts that are also promoting it and putting these comments that are so great and so positive about it being an ad that may not be real people. They could be. There's no way to know. That's another part of social media. Like, you don't know if you're talking to a person. Like, that's another level of it. It could just be a company that bought the exact kind of marketing robots that will tell you whatever they want.
So what Deon you're saying is absolutely true, but I forgot in my comment to include the you feel like you know this person. So the fact that they have to make money is understood. And in
Right.
fact, if you can help them make a little bit more by using
Yeah.
this referral code or clicking through their links, like you might as
Commenting
well.
even.
Yeah, or commenting and helping the virality. Exactly.
By the way, subscribe and smash that like button.
Yeah, thank you. We are moving on a little bit. This is a bit of the topic that came up earlier, but here are the more detailed version of it. So the idea that small payments feel more manageable, though the cost is actually the same, is also from The Atlantic. It says, we have sort of indoctrinated young borrowers in the idea that having credit card debt is bad. This is coming from a person named Ghosh, who's a researcher studying this. And it says Ghosh's research involves polling consumers about which method of spending makes them feel the most guilty. And they said, credit cards are always the worst, she said. Conversely, when given the option between buy now, pay later and debit, shoppers made no moral distinction. And it goes on, even the most prosaic items were fair game for financing. Ghosh had assumed people would tend to reserve buy now, pay later for hedonic things that are harder to justify, until a control group in one of her studies happily used it on groceries. They felt absolutely nothing negative, she said, which blew my mind. And
Yep.
that's what I had in my head when we started this conversation with people buying groceries, buy now, pay later. Maybe they're strapped for cash, and maybe that's just how they shop now. They just don't even think anything about it. They've been completely indoctrinated bizarrely into thinking that credit cards are bad, but buy now, pay later is basically cash. There's no moral difference between paying cash equivalent with a debit card or using buy now, pay later. And the researcher trying to figure all this out cannot believe that people think this way.
Well, the ads, and I've only seen a few of them, but one of the ones that was featured in a video I watched about this was Rebel Wilson sitting on a couch with a friend eating ice cream, and the friend asks like, "What's Klarna or what's Afterpay?" I actually don't remember which company it was for. And they said, "Oh, it's just like eating ice cream but spreading the calories out over 6 months." So like when that's your sales pitch and it sounds so smooth and easy and not dangerous, just super chill, yeah, you're gonna think of it as something that is smooth and easy and super chill, even if it's not. That's how it works.
This is why this is so nefarious, because we live in a society that is completely separated financially. The rich do live on debt. You know, they don't pay income taxes because they don't really have income. All of their purchases are, they don't fund them through their own money. It's all debt. Everything they do is debt, and it works for them because of the tax system that we have in place. Meanwhile, when you are poor, everything is more expensive because everything relatively is more expensive to you because you don't have any money. It is more difficult for you to pay for things. So this idea that you could pay for it over time, I mean, obviously that works so much better because you don't have the money at the time. It's a trap for poor people. It's the same that it's ever been. If you have enough money, it does make sense to use every purchase you make should be on a credit card because you pay it off at the end of the month. You get some benefit from that through the credit card, whatever that is. Some of them have different, points or whatever. It improves your credit score. But meanwhile, if you're poor, that's not how you can do it. If you do use a credit card, and I think that's why the moral implication of it is, because most people that use credit cards aren't using their credit cards in that way. They're not paying it off as they go. They are building up debt over time. And then the credit card does become a problem because it starts taking money from you. So that because you didn't have enough money to pay for it in the first place, now you're getting taxed on that. Taxed, not literally taxed, but financially. It's this cycle that keeps poor people poorer. And these companies inevitably are going to hurt poor people more than they ever could possibly hurt someone that actually has money. Because if you do have money, okay, pay for it over time. Who cares? I will pay for it over time because I have the money. But like Erin was talking about the loop of it, if you don't have money, now you're stuck in this system where you never have the money to pay for anything. Your paycheck is paying for something that you bought 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 2 years ago. It's just this cycle that you can never get out of.
I also feel like it's kind of a trap for younger people as well, because I don't know about anyone on this call, but I did always have that idea that, no, I'm going to make plenty of money. Like, I'll graduate college, I'm going to be very financially stable, not realizing how long it was going to take to get there. So I feel like sometimes when you get into this, it's with the expectation, well, I'm going to continue getting raises. I'm going to like move up into the company. And you don't actually realize how long it will take you to get there. You're pushing things off, but it's going to make it so that when you do get there, you're there with $20,000 in debt or whatever it may be.
For the life of me, I cannot find where I read this. Somewhere in all of my research for today's show, I came across a statement that said that the buy now, pay later companies are effectively speed running the credit card industry while bypassing all of the hard won regulatory protections that are imposed on credit cards. I just want to point out again, it's exactly the fucking same. The whole idea behind a credit card is that you buy something now and you pay for it later. Like, you could do the math. You could see, like, how long do I have to pay this off on a credit card and not pay any interest? It's the fucking same as buy now, pay later. But that is exactly what Uber did and all the ride hailing companies. They came in and they speed ran the taxi industry and became profitable by bypassing all of the hard-won regulations that had been put in place over decades or centuries to protect people in the taxi system, using taxis. Like, they were highly regulated. And there was a phrase I came across recently, I was reminded of, that regulations are written in blood. Humans in general are not good at foreseeing the problems that they're going to create and writing regulations ahead of time. Regulations are written after the fact, after people have been harmed, and usually egregiously. Safety regulations are only written after many people have died. And same with credit card regulations. Credit card regulations were written after they destroyed people's lives. And buy now, pay later, as we heard at the top, are, Biden said, like, maybe we should start to think of these as similar as credit card companies because they are exactly the fucking same. And Trump came along and said, nah. So we do not have regulations in place, and there are none coming. And somehow, through the force of regular advertising and influencer culture and consumption culture, they managed to trick, like, effectively an entire generation of people into thinking that they're gaming the system by using this really cool, great new thing that is like a benefit to them because they can pay for stuff later. And it's not really debt. It's not really debt. It's not like a credit card. Credit cards are terrible. Oh, I would feel terrible if I was spending money on a credit card. That would be the worst. I just use buy now, pay later. That's totally different.
We just make one of the clown memes.
Like, Deon made a point earlier where he was talking about they haven't exactly figured out how to make money. So I like the regulation piece. I also think this is kind of like an Amazon facade where you come in, you're able to offer no interest under certain parameters, but eventually those parameters will get smaller and smaller. Amazon lowered their prices to beat out their competitors, and then went right back to high prices. So I do foresee a future where Afterpay, like, you might be able to get away with 2 payments where you get 0 interest, but eventually that is really gonna tighten, and I do foresee those interest rates thereafter being higher and higher because eventually they're going to have to answer to shareholders.
Oh, yeah, and they put off, at least Klarna put off their IPO because they were sensing some economic uncertainty. And I mean, okay, interesting. I also think it's worth pointing out that we actually have data on the fact that it is increasing your spending just by using these companies. It
Scams.
says scams, these scams. A recent study, this is one of the researchers in the article was talking about that they co-wrote, supports this notion, finding that buy now, pay later use causes a permanent increase in total spending of about $60 a week, stretching the average household retail budget 30%. That's not nothing. And it's probably only going to go up as these things become more and more popular and ubiquitous.
Scam was right.
You are not pulling one over on them. They are pulling
Yeah.
one over on you. And just to wrap up today, because we need to recognize that other people are angry too. Time has this article, Poor People Are America's Swing Voters, recognizing that not everyone we're talking about today using buy now, pay later are poor, but they might be heading that way because the systems at play are not in the favor of average people. So this says, in January, while the world waited to see what a second Trump presidency would look like, photos from the inauguration offered a snapshot of what was to come. Some of the wealthiest people in the world joined politicians in the Capitol Rotunda to mark the beginning of the Trump regime, while everyone else was locked out in the cold. 6 months later, Congress passed one of the largest transfers of wealth from low-income people to the rich in history. As lawmakers go home for their August recess, the record is clear. The White House and Congress are working hand in hand to serve the interest of elites at the expense of everyday Americans. And also bird flu enthusiasts, I would point out. It goes on to explain that over the past few decades, as inequality has grown exponentially for all Americans, the number of poor and low-income white people, 66 million in 2018, has swelled higher than any other demographic. This is one reason low-income majority white communities became susceptible to the populist appeal of the MAGA movement. If white people are hurting, the divide and conquer myth suggests, it must be because Black people and immigrants are taking from them. By leaning into an aggressive investment in extreme ICE raids, Trump's regime has bet the farm on this myth. And it's such an obvious bait and switch. Once you see the cards laid out, they're doing everything to serve the wealthy. And all you get as a poor, angry white person in response is some of your neighbors are going to be deported with the myth that that's going to help you out. Like, the tax system has been completely skewed against you. The financial system is completely skewed against you. And the Trump regime refuses to regulate. But if we get rid of some brown people, then like you'll feel that in your wallet. Jesus Christ.
And we're living before the giant tax breaks go in effect for the super rich next year.
Yeah. In that New York Times article, they mentioned that food prices are 28% higher than they were in 2020. And that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics before Trump eliminated the head of that. And it specifically talks about how lower income households spend roughly a third of their after-tax income on food. And that data was from 2023. That's a lot compared with 13.5% for middle income households. So the idea that anything other than investing in fixing and making a more equitable economy is going to do anything, that anything else is going to make your life better or have any impact on your life, is a complete fabrication. And it's a fascinating and frustrating fact that people have decided to look outside of the things that actually directly impact them and have bought the myth. They've bought the myth. Now, they've also been manipulated to buy the myth. So there's that. But these things are not going to make your daily life better.
We're watching it right now. Zoran Mamdani running for mayor. His name is Zoran Mamdani. He's a Muslim. He's being attacked on all angles, but he still remains popular and will probably win the election because he is laser focused on affordability in New York. And everybody that lives in New York feels how unaffordable it is, except for the very rich. So that's the source of his popularity. And that message would go outside of New York very easily. So if the Democratic Party or some future party ever decided
hint.
That they wanted to take on affordability as a message, there are so many people feeling exactly what we're talking about right now. 1/3 of your income after tax spent on food. That's beyond struggling.
And today's message was brought to you by Klarna, right? Do we do it right? Do we embed it in the right spot?
No one saw it coming.
Joking. Nothing about this is sponsored.
This would be the ad. This would be the ad that we did for Klarna if they ever asked us to.
Right.
An hour and a half long.
You're garbage. You shouldn't exist. Give me money.
So I'll just conclude with the last bit of this article. This is all written by Reverend William Barber, head of Moral Mondays. And he says, if a moral fusion movement led by poor and low-income people can rise up in America today, we have the numbers to change the political conversation. This is why we have organized Moral Mondays across the South to go to the districts that will be hurt first and worst by cuts to healthcare and organize people who will be directly impacted to speak directly to their representatives with clergy and moral leaders by their side. A movement led by these people, linking arms across racial lines and joining hands with progressive allies, could not only decide the presidential elections, but many congressional and other statewide races as well. End quote. It's right to be angry, but you got to aim high enough.
Mm-hmm.
You got to aim high enough. Corporations are going to do what they're going to do. Like Klarna is not going to voluntarily put themselves out of business or even regulate themselves a tiny bit. And with the system we have, companies like Klarna and Afterpay and all of that are allowed to exist. So fine. Then in our reality, we have to direct our anger at the people who are able to do something about it. And that is the government. Did we solve it?
Yeah. Power to the people.
That's right.
All right. If you have any thoughts on this or just want to shout into the void, we will actually hear you if you shout into the voicemail at 202-999-3991. You can also send text messages there. You can find us on Signal at bestofleft.01 or send an email to j@bestofleft.com. Thanks for listening, and remember that this is all really happening, so continue to be decent, act like what you do and say matters, and do what matters most.